Good morning and welcome back to Miniature Monday here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we're going to take a look at the last bit of figures from the Mercenary box set released by Catalyst Game Labs for Battletech. Now, this box set was funded by Catalyst in 2023 and released in 2024 and featured 8 battlemechs and 4 combat vehicles. And today, in this video, it's going to be kind of short because we're just looking at the vehicles. And while you do get 4 vehicles, you get pairs. So technically, we only have 2 different designs to look at. But we will do our traditional look at the figure. I'll give you my thoughts on it, and we'll take a look at some of the art that inspired that. But before we do make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. I try to put out a few videos each week covering all sorts of tabletop content, whether it's board games, miniatures, role-playing, or anything in between. And I'd love for you to come along and see what we have to share. In addition, if you are interested, there are affiliate links down below to Amazon and DriveThruRPG. If you purchase any of your products that way, it does help out the channel a little bit, and we'd appreciate the support. But regardless of whether you do or not, we're grateful you're here, and thanks for watching. So, with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. All right, so first up, we have the Galleon Light tank. Now, this is definitely one of the older units going back pretty much to the beginning of Battletech. And, it's, to be honest with you, for introduction into effectively a starter set, I can't really think of a better design. It is a tank, it's kind of small, and with Mercenaries, they are kind of pushing for more of a support role, so something a little bit more simplified as opposed to full Battletech rules. So, I kind of think this was a good choice as opposed to like a big, heavy kind of a tank. The design itself, I like it. It's got the little turrets on either side. It's got the larger turret up top. Overall, the miniature is pretty clean, very recognizable, and I like it. So, how does it compare to the actual art? Wow, I'm going to have to zoom out on this. So this is from Tech Readout 3025. So again, some of the earliest art for Battletech. And it was done by Dwayne Luce, obviously, because he did all of the art out of 3025. And in this case, I think it's actually really interesting because the art is almost identical to the miniature that we received now. I mean, there are some longer laser cannons here on the side. At least I'm assuming they're laser cannons. They're longer cannons here on the sides, whereas the miniature, they're much shorter in size. But overall, I mean, they're not like the rest of the design. The angles on the plates, the tracks, everything still seems kind of consistent 40 years down the road. It did also make an appearance in camo specs. So, one of the early colorized pieces of Battletech art, even if it was just pretty simple. But they cleaned it up, took a lot of those extra lines off, and just gave it a little bit of Free Worlds purple. Now, we then get this from the 3058 technical readout. So a little bit of a change. It seems more like a modern day striker. So much larger, much higher sitting hull. But then we start to see these shorter side sponsons and a little bit different of a cannon up top. The tracks are obviously a little bit more different than the original because they do have different sized road wheels. So a bit of a change compared to the original piece of art, but not a bad change. All right, and then finally we have our Ill-Clan design. So this is pretty much the basis for the art. But again, I think it's still holding on to that original styling. And I think that's one of the main selling points for me on this figure is that while we're getting new art, it is the Ill Clan, everything out of the same factory style art. However, it still makes me see the original piece of art by Dwayne Luce. So I think they did a really good job upgrading the art, and I think it did a great transition into the new miniatures as well. So that is the Galleon Light tank. All right, now next up we have the Maxum Heavy Hover Transport. So I do think it was a bit of an interesting choice to give two identical transports and two identical light tanks. I think I would have preferred a couple of actual combat vehicles instead of a transport and a combat vehicle. But overall, it's still a good design. Number one, Battletech does use everything. It uses wheels, it uses tracks, it uses hover, and so to include that, I think was fantastic. Also, it is one of the older designs in Battletech, originating in the 3026 technical readout. So the fact that they also, again, brought in some of this classic, I think is fantastic. Another advantage that you're going to get by using this particular figure is because Mercenaries is essentially developing the rules for battlefield support, basically vehicles, infantry, artillery, things like that. I think having a transport is actually a good idea from a game design perspective. Just because if you're going to be using infantry in Battletech, you're going to need to use something that can move it around the battlefield a lot quicker than they're going to be able to move on foot. So having a transport such as the Maxum, I think, is actually a good choice, even though I would prefer something with some heavier artillery. So overall, the miniatures are great. These are literally, like, I have nothing to complain about these miniatures. They look like hovercrafts. They look like they are designed for some sort of a heavy assault. And honestly, I am totally okay with that. It's normally a 50-ton mech, or not mech, a 50-ton vehicle, so it's got some big lifting capability anyways. So I like it. I like the fact that even though it's a transport, it does look a little bit beefier than the Galleon Light tank. So, despite my reservations, I'm still happy to have the model. So that is the Maxum miniature, but let's check out its art. Now, this is its original piece from 3026, drawn by Dwayne Luce. This, I think, is actually one of the more, action-oriented pieces of art. You can actually see the missiles launching here on the top. Usually, Dwayne did not do that in his art. So to actually have something, shooting from the turret is good. It looks like he's got some ammunition, expenditure up here at the top as well. Overall, I like this. Now, with that said, this is a very, very different design. It looks completely different from what we're getting today, but it still implies pretty heavily that it's a hovercraft, that, it's big, it's beefy. I do like that it has the little clear marking here on the side. Next up, we had this one from the 3058 upgrade. Now, this is a big departure from his original design. It's getting closer to what we have now, but it's still a bit of a change. It looks different. It looks like it could be a completely different vehicle from the Maxum itself. And then next up, we've got this one from the Ill Clan era. And while it does look different from our original piece of art, sort of a hybrid, I guess we would say, I do like that the hover skirt is a little bit better defined. The different missile launchers, different things that it's got, it's fairly heavily armed for a transport. But yeah, overall, it's a good design. I like this one, and I'm gonna need to learn the actual transport rules. and not just the ones we used in our made-up scenario a few weeks ago. So overall, it's a good design. I'm happy with the vehicles they chose, and I think that the representation is a good start for Battletech. I'm going to do reviews of the other support boxes later on, so do keep an eye out for that. Make sure you're subscribed. But it'll be interesting to compare these transports and the light tank versus the stuff that comes later on. So do keep an eye out for that. So with that said, let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Are you going to be using vehicles in your games of Battletech, or are you going to just stick to the big stompy robots? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And with that said, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you next time.